Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever happens to be while you're watching. So, as you can see, a little bit of a different background, but the magic room's not behind me today. I'm actually on the road traveling for work. I'm in a hotel in the lovely state of Texas. So, and also, audio is probably going to be a little different. I did bring my good microphone, but I forgot the cable to the good microphone, so I'm just using a laptop microphone. So, apologies for the audio not being as good quality. So, all that being said, I wanted to touch on a couple subjects today. First one being the whole transgender thing. So, personally, I don't care what you identify as, what your orientation is, what you're attracted to, not my business. I don't care. It's same applies to you if you are in that community. My orientation, my attractions, my whatever deviancies, don't you shouldn't care about mine. So anyway, I say all that because the whole transgenderism thing has moved into this whole world of everybody has to accept me and blah blah blah. It's moving into court cases, and that's wanted to touch on one kind of segment of it. We see and hear daily about transgender women, which are biological males that are identifying as women that haven't exactly gone through their change, whether it be hormone treatment, whether it be hormone treatment and surgery, they're just identifying as women. But they're competing in women's sports. So here's my take on this. A transgender female is a biological male. They're competing in biological women's sports: track and field, wrestling, weightlifting, gymnastics, volleyball, basketball now. So, and they're dominating. The transgenders women are breaking old standing, current standing records that biological women had worked hard for to set. So my question is, how come the same isn't happening in reverse? Why aren't transgender men competing in biological male sports and dominating? Why aren't they dominating in football, track and field, gymnastics, weightlifting? Why is there such a discrepancy or disparage? What's the word? A huge gap that nobody's talking about. You have transgender women competing in biological women's sports and breaking all kinds of records. You don't have the same thing happening where transgender men are competing in biological male sports and breaking all kinds of records. Why is that? According to the feminist movement, men and women are equal. According to the transgender movement, there's no difference between men and women. There's no gender's fluid. There's everybody's the same. Everybody's equal. The military is even bringing in women to biological women to try out for special forces. It's this whole thing. But my question is, well, if there's no difference, why aren't transgender men competing in and dominating biological male sports as they are biological transgender women are in biological female sports? And for that matter, why do we even call them women's sports or men's sports? Why aren't they just sports if there's no difference? Why do we have a WNBA? Why not just the NBA? Why aren't women and men competing on the same field? There are some places where they do that, but when it gets into pure athleticism and strength and endurance type of sports, they're separate. But if they're not separate according to the movements at foot, why are they separate sporting events? Why do transgender women have to compete, or why do they compete in women's sports? Why not just compete in sports? Why not wash the field, make it all the same? I mean, because there's no difference, right? There's no difference between a biological male and a transgender male. There's no difference between a biological woman and a transgender woman, right? They're the same. They're not. This transgender movement is bringing about and putting eyes on, if people pay attention and think, the actual biological differences between males and females. So I'll segue for a moment, but I'll bring it back. Professional and pro amateur and amateur athletes, let's speak about the males for an example, are not allowed to take performance enhancing drugs. Do you know what those drugs are? It's testosterone. Biological men use testosterone, or induce artificial or whatever testosterone into their body to enhance their performance when it comes to strength, when it comes to endurance, etc. But that's outlawed. You're not allowed to do that. Okay. So male sports are not allowed to use performance enhancing drugs, otherwise known as testosterone, to increase their athletic performance. It's all supposed to be done naturally. Naturally, you mean working out and practice and that kind of stuff, right? But you're not supposed to use artificial enhancements. Okay, keep that in mind. Let's segue over to transgender women competing in biological women's sports. Why are they dominating events that require athleticism, strength, and endurance? Maybe because biological men have naturally more testosterone than biological women. Therefore, they have a performance enhancing advantage over biological women. I'm just saying, if you look at biology, if you look at the science, biological men produce more testosterone than do biological women by a lot, without performance enhancing drugs, without injecting stuff into their body, right? So if biological men are not allowed to take performance enhancing drugs, otherwise known as testosterone, and compete, because it's outlawed, because it gives them an advantage over other athletes because they have more testosterone, then why do transgender women that are not going through the change, not going through the hormone treatment, they're just identifying as women, allowed to compete against other women? Isn't that an automatic enhancement? Should biological women therefore be able to take performance enhancing testosterone in order to put them on the same level athletically, performance wise, with transgender women? Why not? I mean, there's side effects from the injected testosterone. I'm not debating the science behind that. So you have some biological women that want to be able to compete against these transgender women because they have more testosterone by factors of 100 or more. Why can't they take it? Why can't they take the testosterone? That should even the playing field, right? So transgender women have a testosterone count of, I'm just going to arbitrary number, say 100, and they're competing against biological women who have a testosterone level of 10. Why not allow the biological women to increase their testosterone to equivalency of the transgender women in order to level the playing field? Because it might disprove the theory that men and women are equal. I'm just throwing that out there. Well, if there is an actual difference between men and women naturally when it comes to testosterone, which adds to muscle mass, which adds the ability to lift more weight, to carry more weight for a longer period of time, strength, endurance, athleticism, Well, then biological men should not be able to compete against biological women in events that require, I don't know, strength, endurance, and athleticism. I mean, for fuck's sakes, there's two different bowling leagues. Bowling, it takes skill. I'm not taking skill away from bowlers at all. Um, but why don't men and women compete? Biological men and biological women compete in the same league when it comes to bowling. I'm not talking about your amateur Wednesday night at your local bowling alley. I'm talking about professional wise. Why don't they? Why can't they? Maybe because there's a difference between biological men and biological women when it comes to performance. Because you got to think there is a absolute amount type of skill involved with bowling. You have to hit your mark. You have to know how much spin to put on the ball. You have to know the angles. You have to know how your ball curves or doesn't curve when you're trying to get a specific pin, trying to make a strike or whatever. But there's also strength involved. Men use typically in professional bowling leagues 16-pound bowling balls. It gets a lot of pin action. Women typically use a 14-pound ball. Statistically, there's exceptions to the rule, but I'm just going with the rule because they don't have the natural strength to consistently throw a 16-pound ball. After a certain amount of time, their arms will tire and they won't get the same performance. But men and women are equal, right? Right? So let them take testosterone. Let them take the performance enhancing drugs, to level the playing field. You might have some what mutated females, but at least they can compete. The bigger picture is okay. You're looking out the transgender world makes up. I want to say the last statistics I saw. We'll just call it 1% of our population. So we're changing the 99% to accommodate the 1%. Okay, is that right? Is it? Because you have women, biological women, that are now not being able to get college scholarships to go to college and compete in a sport such as, I don't know, volleyball, weightlifting, track and field, gymnastics, basketball, soccer, wrestling. They are now being edged out of those scholarships by transgender women who then get those scholarships as a transgender woman and go to college for free. So the biological woman, she could have been a high school let's just say track star and held all the national records for whatever events that she competes in, the 100-meter dash, 400-meter dash, whatever, pole vaulting, whatever, right? She's the number one biological female in the country, holds all the records. Now she has the chance that she won't get a scholarship because a transgender female can beat her. Is that fair? Is that right? Is that what we want to do? I don't think it's right. I think it's wrong. If a transgender female wants to compete in an athletic event, let her compete in the biological field she was born into. I'm just saying. Or give her a handicap. So, as is using track and field, 100-meter dash, a transgender female has a 1 second handicap. Ooh, ooh. What do you think? So the transgender female has to start 1 second or wait, 1 second delay. I'm just arbitrary numbers, mind you, from the time the gun goes in order to keep the playing field equal. I mean, we kind of do it in the military when it comes to the standard. And I'm speaking on the Army in this case. The standard PT test, not the new one they just came out with recently, but the one that was in effect for like 25 years. There was male standards for push-ups, sit-ups, and 2-mile run, and there were female standards. The females didn't have to do as many push-ups as men, didn't have to do as many, or the sit-ups were about the same, or maybe a little more for certain age brackets when it comes to the females. But they had more time to run the 2 miles in than men did. What? Why? So when it comes down to it, when you're competing on a board to get to the next rank, your PT score in the Army is considered part of your package, right? So if a male does, keep in mind there's age brackets involved with the PT test, but I'm being very general. Does 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, and does the 2 mile run in 14 minutes, that might score him, let's say it's 230 points, just arbitrary numbers. But the same 50 push-ups, 50 sit-ups, and 14-minute 2 mile run may net that female a score of 285, 290, give or take with age brackets. She now has 50 more points than the male does for advancement. Is that right? Is that fair? I mean, we're all the same, right? We're all equal. There's no difference between a male and a female, right? Until it comes to, grading a PT test, until it comes to sporting events, until it comes to the natural testosterone that a biological male makes as compared to that of a female, which has a direct impact on muscle mass, which has a direct impact on muscle endurance, which has a direct impact on athleticism. Why is there a separate bracket for weightlifting between biological men and biological women? Why don't they compete together? Why doesn't a biological female hold world records in weightlifting? Not just against other women, but period. Why? Track and field. Men outcompete biological men, outcompete biological women in every event in track and field. Well, why don't they compete together if there's no difference? Why do we have to have a separate league, if you will, of men and women? If we're all the same and we're all equal, why isn't there just track and field where men and women compete together? I'm going to go back to the question I asked at the beginning, or towards the beginning of this. Why is there no transgender male that's competing against biological men and breaking records like there are transgender females that are competing against biological females and breaking all kinds of records globally in almost every athletic event there is? Stuff I think about. I hope you think about it. Let me know what you think. On that note, have a good evening.